There was blood in her mouth now, despite Three Seagrass's efforts to smear it away. "Great," said Three Seagrass. "Fantastic. Reporting your death to the Emperor would be incredibly embarrassing and possibly end my career, and also I think I'd be upset." "Oh, I wouldn't say no to some blood in my mouth." "No, Dad, that's just a pink toy." A Memory Called Empire by Arcady Martine. Who's gonna love this book? I mean, everybody? So there's all kinds of science fiction with galactic empires that are rehashes of Rome or the British Empire or the Third Reich.
I'm doing my part!
But what if there was a galactic empire inspired by the Aztecs? A Memory Called Empire is a political thriller with the Aztecs as the inspiration for this galactic empire. It's actually a fish-out-of-water story with a dash of murder mystery thrown in. And there's all kinds of nuanced imaginings of what it's like to live in and have to adapt to this imperialistic culture. I've been trying to think of what to compare this book to. I don't honestly read hardly any political thrillers. I will say that it's focused in scope. There is one character that you're following throughout this. It's not a political thriller in the sense of you're seeing things from all these different figures' points of view. You're seeing sort of the bureaucracy, and you're seeing the tension in the politicians, but also maybe there's like people on the ground. It's not like that. It's very focused on this single main character, which I think is a huge strength. And there's still all this complexity. The main character is super interesting, and the environment is such a fantastic character in and of itself. If I had to compare it to something, I guess I would compare it to, I'll look up the title, but there was a movie about the Cuban Missile Crisis. And imagine that, but you're following around some particular ambassador from Cuba as they try and navigate this crisis, and also the United States is the Aztecs. Who's going to hate this book? I don't know. People who hate good books? I hate good books. What? Why? They take attention away from me. I don't like your videos for the same reason. Ashaya! Okay. So I guess if you don't like political thrillers, then you're not going to like this book. If you're annoyed by difficult to pronounce Aztec names, then that might annoy you as you read through it, although there is a pronunciation guide in the back. This is usually the part of the video where I will tell you what's imperfect, what's annoying, sort of the sand in my shoes about the book, but I honestly don't find any flaws in A Memory Called Empire. Like me. Perfect just the way I am. It's beautifully written. The plot runs like a greyhound. The characters are relatable and engaging. And then there's that extra twist of this like Aztec civilization that it gets into. There's definitely an interesting thread of imperialism going on as well. That's at the forefront of the story. I skimmed Goodreads looking for what other people's responses were to this book. And I did find some folks who didn't like the author's prose style. I absolutely did not notice it at all. I found it to be very easy to read and also normal, I guess I would say. I suppose one thing that might put people off is that the book gets intellectual in parts. If you're not willing to look up or accept that you're not going to understand perhaps some technical poetry analysis jargon, some neuroscience terms as well, and maybe some linguistics, then that can be a turnoff. But that's kind of some of the stuff that I love about science fiction, is that it's exposing me to new areas of study and new ideas that maybe I hadn't sought out before. Basically, I would say that people that don't like this book, science fiction readers that don't like this book, have a very narrow view of what constitutes or what should constitute science fiction. Now, if you're not a science fiction reader, I still would so strongly recommend this, especially maybe if you're into political thrillers. It's such an amazing book, and the science fiction element really doesn't detract from anything. It doesn't even distract from anything at all. I found it to be incredibly easy to read, and I think that if you're looking to experiment with something outside of the normal genres that you read, this is an amazing place to start. So, obviously, I thought this book was great. It's not just a political thriller. When the author turns her pen toward the sci-fi element, when she writes about the cultural interactions, the twisty plot, the elegant prose, it all leaps from the page, and it's incredibly skillfully managed and exciting. The protagonist is wonderfully realized, as they have to be if you have one main character that you're following throughout the whole story. She demonstrates her cleverness and her capability, even as she's being outmatched by dangerous enemies and allies, everybody with their own agenda. The plot seems like it must have been carefully planned beforehand and stitched together from many pieces, but the seams, if they're there, were unnoticeable to me. Oh, and it's a debut. Like, sheesh, way to make some of us feel insufficient. It was hard for me to pick a part of the book to quote. I don't feel like there's any single aspect that's really representative of the whole, and that's a compliment because it speaks to the diversity of the writing. The part that I quoted at the very opening of this video comes off as quirky and humorous. Somebody's just been hurt, and another character is responding to that. But that's kind of disingenuous. That's not really the mood of the novel itself. There are aspects that are quirky and humorous, but that scene itself, actually, is quite serious, and the character that's responding in sort of the goofy way may very well be in shock, which is suggested by the rest of that section. There are other parts of the book that are profound and deeply poetic. There's poetry throughout.
When the 17th Legion came through the jump gate in bright, star-snatching ships and filled up the Abrechti sky with shapes of my home, I was at first afraid, a profound discontinuity, to know fear in the shape of one's own face.
So I'm sure there's a ton that authors can learn from reading A Memory Called Empire. But what I really want to talk about is how you raise questions in the reader's mind. And I'm going to keep this brief, though, and sort of just encourage folks to check out the book. So there are motivating mysteries that come in sizes big and small and occur frequently, regularly throughout the book. And I'd say the first one is in the title. Pop quiz writers, what is the most important word in the title, A Memory Called Empire? It's not Empire. That one's a freebie. Every other sci-fi, fantasy, novel, movie has put Empire in their title. It wasn't original when Empire Strikes Back did it, and it's not original now. So the answer's memory, right? Wrong. Called is the most interesting word in the title. This book could have been named A Memory of Empire. And in fact, my script that I sketched out here for this video, I keep mistakenly writing down A Memory of Empire. That's an adequate title. Your eyes look at that and you probably say, oh yeah, that's probably a sci-fi or fantasy novel. It even already raises some questions. Why is the Empire a memory? Something must have happened to it. It seems like it's not around anymore, right? But Called takes things to a whole new level. Called raises so many more questions. Who is calling this memory Empire? There's an implication that not everybody is calling it Empire. And that implication suggests conflict. I'm just going to say a little bit more about tension and raising questions in your reader's mind, and then tell you that just study the opening of this, especially as the main character is traveling to and arriving at the planet where she's going to be employed, when she's meeting with her liaison to the Empire itself, to the imperial throne and the imperial bureaucracy. If you're striving to be an author, I want you to note the waxing and waning of tension and questions at the beginning. They're frequent and overlapping. It's like a stone that's been dropped into a wave. There's ripples now on the surface of the larger wave itself. The big waves are the major questions, the major problems also, that it's going to take the entire novel to solve. But these ripples are little questions and little problems, both, that the protagonist is going to have to deal with and strive to answer in the immediate moment, on the page-to-page basis, on the paragraph-to-paragraph basis. And by resolving some of those tensions, by answering some of those questions for the reader as well as the protagonist, the reader gets those cookie crumbs that they don't satisfy, but they leave you wanting more. They leave you turning pages. And they build your confidence, the reader's confidence, that this author is competent. They know what they're doing. You are in capable hands for the rest of the novel. Small questions are answered. Small problems are overcome. Even as the large waves get larger and build to that ultimate finale. Someday I'm going to get around to making some videos that are focused on writing advice and not just book reviews. But until then, good luck and good writing. And also good reading. And this is a great one that you should check out. I want you to not worry that Shia is not in my corner of the video like she was in the previous one. Nothing to be concerned about. My, doggy gets what doggy wants, and doggy decided that she wanted to be in this little chair over here with the blanket, which she pulled down around herself. We try and use that to protect the chair, but she just needed a little bit of coziness, and she's just taking a wee nap right there.